Morning, everyone, and welcome to the virtual breakfast sessions. I'm Larry Sashin. We've got a great show today, put together a great panel to speak about what everybody loves. We're going to be talking about pizza in 2025. But before we do that, let me thank the person who's paying today's bills. ERA Group and Ed Flanagan. Listen, everybody works very, very hard for their money. And I was told by a wise man at one point, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. If you want to keep that money that you've been paying bills with all these years, call Ed Flanagan and the ERA Group, and they will sift through your invoices and your contract and make sure you're getting exactly what you pay for and you're not paying too much for it. So ERA Group and Ed Flanagan. Back to the show. Pizza in 2025. But before we get rolling on that, Anthony, why don't you introduce yourself?
All right, Larry, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony. Yes, that is my real name. I have very sadistic parents. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for the state of Connecticut. I'm really trying to show the world that Connecticut's a really good place to not only visit and have a damn good pie, but also live and work.
Okay. Scott.
The best way to explain what I do is I'm a professional pizza enthusiast. So I'm based in New York City, where I take people on tours of famous pizzerias, but I also work in bridging the pizza community globally. I work pizzerias across the country in a network called Slice Out Hunger, which is a nonprofit. And I also work with great people in other big pizza cities, like Mr. Anthony and Mr. Colin Kaplan in New Haven, Connecticut. We have great friends in Chicago, great friends in LA, and of course, in Atlanta, Mr. Jeff Verasano's. Pizza is love that brings all of us together, and I'm honored to be here with you today.
By the way, folks, that was Scott Wiener. Okay. Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Jeff Verasano. I was born and raised in the Bronx, and when I moved to Atlanta about 26 years ago, I realized that pizza world outside the Northeast is really quite different, and I went on a quest, kind of an obsession, to reproduce the high-end pizzas that we had. In 2006, I had a website that went viral and became the #1 website in the world for how to make pizza for about 10 years. If you Googled New York pizza recipe or Neapolitan pizza recipe, it came up as #1. And now I own a pizzeria in Atlanta since 2009. That's my home base right now.
Okay. And Fred, say hi.
Good morning, Fred Clashman, editor and publisher, Total Food Service. Thanks, guys, for taking the time.
And once again, I'm Larry Sashin. Pizza in 2025. I wrote in the invitation that, back in 1963, when I was a teenager, pizza and a Coke was 35 cents. The slices were wide, our choices were few, and we all had a favorite pizza guy. Mine was Vinny. Sang like Dean Martin. He twirled a pizza like a Harlem Globetrotter. He painted that pizza like a Jackson Pollock painting with cheese and sauce. And they were just a piece of beautiful that everybody had enough money in their pocket to buy. Well, times have changed. And times have changed. Scott, why don't you tell the folk the obvious things, how times have changed?
Well, it's funny to hear you say you remember the price of the pizza and you remember all those moments. And of course, there's the natural elements like inflation and the cost of labor that changes. But change is the very reason that we are even talking about pizza today. Because if change didn't exist and the original pizza of the mid-18th century in southern Italy was still the definition of pizza, I don't think we would be so into it, because that would have been a much flatter, denser, burnt yet raw food. And the food that you just mentioned, Larry, that I know we all love, has evolved far beyond that. So quite thankful for all that change from this sort of sidelined food of the mid-18th century to now 78,000 pizzerias in the United States alone. So pretty incredible transformation.
Just a point. Last year, Americans ate 845,000 tons of pizza.
But most of that was me.
Okay, good. So pick up on that.
I'll tell you, every day I go into the pizza shop and I say, I'm not going to have pizza today because, I'm trying to low carb it and all that. And it doesn't matter. Every day, some pie comes out, it was the wrong pie, and it's sitting there and it looks great. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to have a bite. And next thing you know, I've eaten a whole pizza. I'm sure Scott experiences this too a lot.
Anthony, can you add?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Over the last year or so. So, by way of background, I'm not from Connecticut originally. Much like a few of you gents, I lived in New York for 10 years prior to moving to Connecticut. So, whether it was the Bronx or Brooklyn, I feel like I've had all the best in New York. And so, coming to Connecticut, eyes wide open to seeing a whole new style of pizza, also known as a Beats, and then Greek pizza, which I'd never had before moving here. So, I have also tried it all. In fact, actually, we just put out this poster a couple weeks ago called Connecticut by the Pie. 30 different pizzerias around the state, no significance other than just well recognized. And I will admit I had, over the course of 2 days of taking all these photos, I ate at least one slice from each of those. So I have the waistline to prove it as well. And I think this diversity of pizza that exists, I think the fact that a marketer like myself, who is running messaging for an entire state, is part of this conversation, is a testament to how much pizza has grown, how much people love this food, and how much of a cultural touch point it is, because the engagement we've been able to see come in is the thing that's actually helping Connecticut stand out when people have traditionally thought of us as a drive-through state.
So, Scott, I have to ask you this question. At some point, Tom Monahan and a company called Domino's came in 30-something years ago, tried to kidnap an industry and a product, and somehow we've managed to survive it. What's the reality of, as Anthony talks about this growth, how much of that growth is a result of change coming in and being created and changing the landscape?
100% of the growth is due to that change. And Fred, I love that you just name dropped Tom Monahan and Domino's, because Domino's and Pizza Hut and Little Caesars and all those big chains that those of us who love artisan independent restaurants sort of have the fear of them, they're the ones responsible for most of your clientele. If we didn't have those restaurants coming out of the Midwest, we would have no national identity or understanding of what pizza was, because before the 1950s, pizza was very regionalized. And that's why things like New Haven at Beats existed. People just down I-95 didn't know about it, didn't need to know about it, because they had their own thing. So when pizza started landing outside of that northeastern U.S. Italian habitat, suddenly it was able to change because there was no understanding of what it was previously. And so the tastes of the people in the Midwest just fell in line with the frequency of the pizza that was happening. And that's why now it's interesting to see in the year 2025, 75 years later, that artisan style of pizza is really on the upswing, even in the face of those chains. So I'm thankful to the chains, but I'm also thankful that I have enough pizza within a half a mile from my apartment that I don't need to order from them.
And the other question that goes with that, Anthony, this is sort of at you, is I look at somebody like Pepe's and Sally's trying to franchise and grow. How do you take an oven that was 100 years old and replicate what Scott talks about, which is what makes this pie special, how it's cooked?
That is the million-dollar question that I would not be shocked if they're trying to figure out how to answer as well. I mean, it is all about, look, it's not just about ingredients and scaling it and shipping it out. It's all about the quality of what these makers. So these makers have this intellectual property that exists in their mind. And it's the little details of when they're rolling the dough, how to place the cheese, how to spread the sauce, where in the oven, when to move it. I mean, all of those variables contribute to what the difference is between a pie at the Spot at Pepe's in New Haven is versus a pie in one of their new Florida locations. Sure, every ingredient can be the same, but there are also going to be those variables. I think that's, again, the million-dollar question. If they can figure that out, they're going to be the new Domino's or Pizza Hut.
Yeah, but you know what?
Scott's doubtful on that one.
I gotta say, they're not trying to be the new Domino's or Pizza Hut.
It's too eclectic. It really is. I've stood in line in that parking lot in New Haven next to Pepe's and have eaten their pies many times. I have also eaten their pie in Yonkers once.
Yeah.
Right? It's sort of like eating a Nathan's hot dog in Brooklyn on Central Avenue in Yonkers.
I want to hear what Scott has to say. Scott, what do you have to say about these ovens? Is an oven?
Well, the first thing I got to say about the oven itself is they have one oven builder who builds all of their ovens. So all their ovens are a replica of the original. They're not putting in gas-fired or electric ovens or wood-fired or something and making what they claim to be the same pizza. They are installing coal-fired ovens. They're all 14-foot square. They're all built by the same guy. So they do have that. They also have a lot of elements in place to standardize, that's the hard part. It's they're taking this 100-year-old tradition, trying to systematize it, which is the huge challenge. But they've standardized the oven, which is really great. They've standardized their dough, which gets tricky because, as you just mentioned, Florida locations are a different water supply, and it's not necessarily a bad one. It just is a different one. I mean, I was in New Haven yesterday. Wherever I go, I carry a TDS meter to check the dissolved solids of the water, just so I can see what variations there might be without knowing exactly what minerals are in this water. Their mineral content in New Haven is barely higher than the mineral content in New York, but the chlorine content is higher. there. And that's where you run into some issues where you might need to modify things. So to answer the $1 million question is, I think that they know what they're doing, and I don't think they're trying to be a Domino's. I think they're trying to be as close of a link to something that breeds authenticity and honesty from the Northeast that people in Florida and at the other 18 locations can connect with. And I think that's all you have to do. It's never going to be Worcester Street. It just has to be close.
But I'll tell you, I make a lot of pizzas. Even my own unit, I have a second unit in the airport. We've done a lot of training, but you really need somebody who is obsessive, who's on site. So I do a lot of personal tastings myself. You can come to the restaurant and you can order from my staff, or you can book a tasting and I'll make about a dozen flavors for you. And no matter how much I try to train my staff, it's just different, right? So I think that it is very hard to replicate it. I think every one of these high-end pizzerias that Scott takes you to on his tours has one or two people behind it who was the artist who really worked very hard on it. And I bet you most of them would tell you that by the time they hit 18 units, it's not going to be the same. It's not a Domino's style product at all.
Jeff, did you actually have a guy in market, Antico, at one time that used to close on Mondays and fly everything in from Naples or whatever? Do you know that guy, Jeff?
Yeah, you're talking about
I'm sorry.
Gio.
I asked you a question.
You're talking about Gio.
Yeah.
What was the question again? I'm sorry.
I asked, did you actually have a guy in the market in Atlanta one time that used to close on Monday and fly everything in from Naples?
Well, that's a little bit of marketing shtick. We all fly in stuff, stuff comes in commercially. His is not really very Neapolitan. I mean, it sort of looks it, but it's actually a very, very heavy, thicker dough. It's not really a Neapolitan style if you go to Naples.
Jeff, you said an interesting word there that I would love to hear from everybody who are all talking about this. Artists. I think pizza is really, it's an expression of whether it's regions, local culture, even maybe what the chef is in the mood for in the moment. But, no two people are going to create the same thing, just like no two people are going to have the same handwriting, or they're going to say the same word, that, express it with a different dialect. So I think
for sure,
it's as much as we want to codify it and make it a science for the sake of making money, the authenticity is what matters. And I think that's what folks are really trying to bite into when they get in and they have that.
When I do my tastings, I'm pulling from about a list of about 26 or 27, what I consider very, very high-end recipes out of literally hundreds of different combinations I've tried. But there's one pizza that I have made different every single time for the last maybe 7 or 8 years. It's my favorite pizza. I'm obsessed with it, and I never make it the same. Like every time, I'm still looking for ways to tweak it. You're just not going to get that.
What is it?
I'm sorry. It's actually, I hate to even photograph it and put it online because it looks like it's really totally burnt, and I guess it is. It's the bacon. It's the capicola, peppadews, parsley, and olive oil. So it's a Nana's base. Nana's is basically almost a Brooklyn style. So instead of basil, it's oregano and parsley in the sauce. Regular fior di latte, mozzarella, and fresh mozzarella in the water. And then it's thinly sliced capicola, peppadews, which is a South African sweet pepper. And then it's baked at 2 temperatures. So it starts off very hot at about 780, gets really nice and charred on the outside. And then it goes in a cooler oven around 400 and dries out because it actually has a lot more toppings, a lot more sauce and cheese. So it's drying out until the cheese kind of changes just a little bit, turns a little bit more of that, like almost like you talked, I think, in an episode about the orange slice once, Scott. I think that was you in a recent video. So it sort of cheese melds with the sauce and then it comes out and I have to wait for it to cool. I have to, I take a temperature gun to it. When it drops to 155, I add the parsley and the olive oil. I add olive oil to the crust. Not Neapolitan style. It's totally different. I'm obsessed with it. It is definitely the best pizza that I make. And people, when they taste it, are just shocked because it has absolutely everything. It's sweet. It's savory. It has a different mouthfeel. It's much more leathery. It's much more... Mouthfeel, by the way, is one of these things that's very difficult to get pizza makers to understand, that it's not just flavors, it's mouthfeel. So when you're going to new units, or you're training new people, you're giving them, instructions, but if it doesn't come out exactly right, then they have to be able to adjust. And if they're just focused on just flavor or just the look of it, or every topping should be the same weight or something, it's just not going to come out.
And I'm assuming you can't deliver a pie like that. And that's one of the issues.
I hate delivery. I actually recently cut off Uber and Grubhub. I might go back to them, but I no longer do them. I do let people pick up the pizzas. I do some delivery through Toast, the Toast POS system. But if I had my way, I wouldn't let anybody deliver. If it was a different style of pizza, it would be fine. fine. It just doesn't work well with the Neapolitans at all.
So Anthony and Scott, can we have pizza artists and still be in the delivery business to keep private equity and stockholders happy?
I certainly have a lot of thoughts about that. I mean, Jeff, as a pizza artist, and every other person who fits into that category hates delivery. Nobody wants to put pizza into the box until they get a call from the landlord about rent. And that's when I see pizzerias that tweak. It's sort of, it goes back to Domino's, actually. What Tom Monahan did with Domino's was not create a pizza that people like. He created a pizza that he could make efficiently without high skill set from the labor crew, and that he could make money on. That his business was business. It's not like Jeff, who got into this because of a deep passion. And that's the difference between what Anthony referred to as artist and what we've been talking about as this kind of like machinery of the pizza industry, that word industry. And that's why putting a pizza in a box means if you have that artist gene, but you also want to pay your rent, pizzerias have figured out a way to compromise and make a pizza that will deliver better, or they've bought the little paper inserts that go into the boxes that keep the pizza elevated so that they breathe. They'll do what Jeff was probably the first guy I ever saw do this, pulled a pizza out of an oven, dropped it directly onto a cooling rack for 30 seconds. And now everybody does it. And if you're not doing it, then you're not in the cool pizza maker club. The answer to the question is there are things you can do, but it's always a compromise. And with a compromise, nobody's 100% happy, and that means it's a good compromise. But with Jeff, he'd rather you sit down inside the restaurant.
Anthony, you walk a fine line. You serve both the independent artiste and the chain. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's with both of those. What I really would say, going back to the original question about putting it in the box and exporting it versus, eating it on the spot, I think you guys, I'm not going to yuck anybody's yum to say this anyway. There is a time and a place for both. I'm not saying that like a politician to really straddle the line, but there are benefits and costs to both. So I do think, if you want an authentic, real, pure experience from a food standpoint, you got to go to the restaurant. It doesn't matter if you're making smash burgers, pizzas, or tacos. That is how you experience food in its purest form. And that also doesn't matter if I'm doing it at home or going to a restaurant.
Yep.
However, what I appreciate, and again, in my role in the marketing world, but also with serving two different types of constituencies here in Connecticut, both the independent guys, which by the way, Connecticut's 97% of all restaurants here are independently owned. It's the most in the country.
Interesting.
You want people to get the independent mom and pop experience there on the spot. But also, I'm not going to complain when businesses around the state start using pizza boxes like this. They're basically exporting Connecticut. And so for me, I genuinely appreciate this in the fact that it's spreading the message. People are understanding the culture. They're buying into it. And actually, it kind of goes back to what the value of Domino's and Pizza Hut and all those places were. Sure, they different ingredients, they were trying to replicate it in mass, but what that really did for the industry, and again, why we're all talking today, it transformed culture. It transformed industry. We're having a conversation about pizza because more and more and more people know it and love it. I mean, for goodness sake, the Ninja Turtles' favorite food was pizza. So as a kid of the 80s, that's how I started loving pizza in the beginning.
Okay.
So I think there is a little bit of this give and take. And you actually go into ingredients. Scott probably has very strong feelings about this, but you see Modern doing a collaboration with a local artist and the New Haven Water Authority where they're canning New Haven water, putting Modern's dough recipe on the side, and Billy Pistari cutting videos and explaining to people how to make that at home. So it's, I think, again, it's great. People love pizza, but also we're realizing that anything that has been commodified becomes a big business, and a lot of folks want to get involved. And
Let me talk for a second.
Wait,
Sorry.
guys, I'd love to keep this going for another hour, but time is our enemy, as it always is. And I do, and if it's all right with you guys, I'd like to call you and do a Pizza 2025B and continue this conversation, because I think it is that good a conversation. But we got to call an end to this show. What I want to do now is go around the room and everybody just give one more tidbit of information. Anthony, since you were talking, you could finish.
So coming up October 1st to start a National Pizza Month, Connecticut is launching the Connecticut Pizza Trail. So for anybody who's listening, pay attention to that. Check it out on ctvisit.com. And that's going to be the top 100 pizzerias in Connecticut. A combination of first a public vote, and then second a panel of 10 judges, all all contributed their thoughts to round it out, make sure that we had all the best of the best. So, whether you're in Atlanta, New York, Chicago, or Timbuktu, you'll have a chance to come and get some of the best pizza in the nation and in the world right here in Connecticut.
Okay, Scott.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you and give you another Connecticut thing, even though I don't know if people will hear this in time, but this Friday is the Beats Feast with Colin Kaplan, a ton of pizzerias in Naples or in New Haven, and they're looking to set the world record, the Guinness World Record for the largest pizza party with 5,000 people simultaneously eating pizza, outdoing a company in Tulsa called Andolini's and the World Pizza Champions that set that same record many years ago, who have heard about the New Haven record and are now vowing to beat them, even though there's a third group in the mix in Newark, New Jersey, who's partnered with Papa John's, and they're claiming that they're going to try to set a record, the same record, at the end of September. So we're in the middle of a Guinness World Record pizza eating party battle between Newark, New Jersey, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and New Haven, Connecticut.
Oh gosh. Thank you, Scott. Jeff.
Oh God, I love that. I'm going to be in New Haven on Halloween, so I haven't had New Haven pizza in about 10 years, so I'm kind of excited for that. But if anyone is down in the South and is in Atlanta, I will just end by inviting them to come to book a personal tasting with me, where you sit at the Pete Bar and we walk through and we spend an hour and a half and we talk about pizza, and we will make a dozen flavors. I typically make pies that have 4 flavors on them, like in a little quattro, 4 totally different flavors, and we do 3 of those, and we get a dozen flavors in, and it's really an experience. Most people say that they didn't even realize pizza could go in some of these different directions. So I'll just extend that invitation.
Okay, Fred.
I'm concerned for the industry. I've been to trade shows this year, and all I've seen is automation and robotic. I'm concerned that we continue with guys like Anthony and Scott and Jeff. We continue to protect the artisan pizza maker, and I'm concerned that we protect the traditional deck and wood burning oven, and we don't see the age of the conveyor oven come in because of private equity and change this industry.
I have more hopes than you, Fred, on that. But before I have my little comments, I've got to thank somebody. Ed Flanagan and ERA Group. Listen, I've been over it and over it for each show. You work extremely hard for your money. If you want to retain that money, call Ed Flanagan and the ERA Group, and they will claw back that money from you, for you, not from you. Okay, now my final comment. Yes, I saw Domino's come in. I see Papa Joe's and all these other Little Caesars and all these people that are trying to wrest the pizza world away from the artisan chef. Meanwhile, I think they're selling more of those beehive-shaped pizza ovens now in the United States than they ever have done before. Because no matter how many people will buy a cheap pie and eat it, there's always somebody who really wants good food. And pizza is good food. Take care of your local pizza artist. They work very hard for their money and they turn out great products. So with that, we'll be back next week. I will be on the phone with these guys planning a Pizza 2025B. I only have 2 things left to say, folks. Everyone, stay positive, test negative, and I'll see you next week.